I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when we capitalize, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of
injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when it happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I don't think I will ever tire of hearing of that voice, of the power of that voice, and listening to that call to action. A dream that still stands out there that is still unfulfilled. And ours to do. Good morning, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry. I'm the minister of this congregation, and I'm joined today by our service associate, Larry Lavender, with music by Kid Astronaut and Glenn Thomas Rideout. And of course, our tech ushers, Mary Stagpole, Deborah Mensch, and Scott Nelson are with us today. And I'm so grateful because they help everything run so smoothly. I will start with our bowl. As I say our welcome words, I invite you to shift into gallery mode if you're not already in gallery mode, and scroll through the screens and so you can experience the lovely diversity of this congregation, because without this congregation, without you, there would be no us. We are the beloved community, imperfect and beloved. You are all welcome here today, in all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness. You're welcome here. In all the ways that you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and all the places you are from, you are welcome here. Bring them along. Christian, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian, Universalist, with all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. And no matter how long you've been away, nor how soon until you return, you're welcome here. Whether you come today with laughter in your heart or with tears, we welcome you. You're invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and welcome and willing hands. We welcome you here today. I do have a few announcements this morning. Following today's service, Gail Everett, Don Engelstad, and I will be in a breakout room with any newcomers who want to get to know the fellowship a little better or learn more about Unitarian Universalism. Larry Lavender will be in a breakout room for the post-service discussion. As many of you know, we made some changes to the inclusivity and anti-racism training to accommodate needs that arose in the moment, and frankly, to accommodate the impact of the insurrection on all of our energies. Julica Herman de la Fuente met with our BIPOC members of this congregation and members of the UU Mountaintop BIPOC community last Thursday. And Julica will host another second training. So that was the second training for BIPOC members for white identified folks on Tuesday, January 28th. And you can still register for that training. In addition, and the link is going into the chat. In addition, I do hope many of you will attend the Martin Luther King Day activities tomorrow that are in this area. And the links are going into the chat for those events now as well. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us and hope that even in this virtual community, you can experience the warmth, the love, and the commitment of this congregation. Each Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us. If you would like to get better connected, please see the chat window for our link to the first time visitors page, or email your information to our office manager, Carol. Her email address will be in the chat window as well. And be sure to check out the fellowship calendar and connections weekly for all the opportunities we have to stay connected. Finally, if there are any new people who would like to introduce themselves in the chat, please do, because we just love to know who is among us every day. And in this virtual format, it's a little harder to come up and say hello to you. All are invited to stay for virtual coffee hour after the service or join any of the other offerings that I just spoke about. And now, if you have a chalice at home, would you light it with me as I light our fellowship chalice? And so we know where all our chalices are, please write in the chat, chalice lit in, and then the name of your town. Join me in our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'll sing our bowl again and invite you to use the sound of the bowl to draw you more deeply into the present moment and into the company of this gathered community.
Good morning. I was born a privileged white child in a small rural town in central Massachusetts. There wasn't a single person of color in all of Berlin. As a matter of fact, there was an active cell of the KKK in Berlin during my father's lifetime. That group had a set-to with the Catholics in the bordering town of Clinton. Had to be broken up by the state police. Dad didn't share that with me until I was in my 40s. I did not meet an African American until I sang in a regional choir in high school. So my racial experience was confined to television coverage of the civil rights movement, which essentially left me believing that Southerners were brutal racists and Northerners were okay. I was in high school then, and my understanding of the truly twisted history of America's caste system was woefully incomplete. Still, that was when I became a lifelong admirer of Martin Luther King Jr. as an intelligent and courageous leader. It wasn't until he was cowardly assassinated by a KKK member that I understood the depth of the risk Reverend King lived with. I'm sure he was tempted to stay home and avoid the ugly hatred and violence of white supremacy, but he persisted and lived into his destiny. So when George Floyd was murdered by white police officers last summer, I was invited to a standout for BLM, Black Lives Matter, in Lafayette. I understood that there was a possibility of counter-protests, but I realized the national situation called for a presence on the issue of police violence toward people of color. This poem is about the many times I participated in the BLM stand-up. BLM Stand Out by Larry Lavender. I'm wearing my pandemic mask. I got my sign, hiking to a spot on the corner. Traffic is light, air heavy with forest fire smoke. Violence in the news feeds as the nation lurches toward Election Day. Decency and democracy are on the ballot. I hold my sign as I hold up my sign as the light changes. Cars on 287 surge north. I wave to whomever's behind the wheel, checking for acknowledgement, but mostly the drivers pay no attention, studiously ignoring BLM. Perhaps they also were brought up in the segregation. They're hard to read as they zip by. Sometimes, though, I see a twitch, a grimace that's mostly suppressed. Maybe they're ambivalent about BLM. Now's not the time to think about it on the way to work or store. They've seen the news, the crimes. They saw the deadly force, the blood, the gore. Probably wish I weren't standing out with BLM. But I won't be quiet anymore. Maybe I'll follow them home. We'll discuss BLM. But then here comes the happy horn honker, thumbs up, peace sign, enthusiasm uncurbed, happy to find someone standing out with BLM. I wonder what they know about Jim Crow, of slavery, KKK family picnic lynchings, chain gang, sugar cane, cotton plantation drinking gourd, Underground Railroad whippings, hobbling the runaway, selling your mother away, your father away, while you're orphaned, stay. The oddity of being a living commodity and the crushing poverty of then and recently structural racism, implicit bias, the current incarnation of a surplus of white supremacy. I know I was ignorant for a lot of my life, but I've been in the prisons of mass incarceration and they were not white. The chorus of honking and thumbs up nevertheless lift my spirits for a while as folks drive by with a smile. And this one is rolling down his window to share all lives matter, unaware perhaps that Blacks are 3 times more likely to be massacred as officers protect and serve. But I think that's unlikely. He'd rather not deal with the dissonance, and so he distances, hiding behind his formula like Robert Frost's neighbor, and good fences make good neighbors. There are those who think my BLM is aimed at them and retaliate with withering hate. Blink you, mother blinker, while the other one flips me a bird and insists I'm a communist. Still, the ones that scare me the worst are those who take both hands off the wheel to flip me a double bird while their face contorts in savage rage to let me know just how they feel. I wish I knew. After 2 hours of this, my arms and wrists are sore. For that and so much more, I tuck my BLM under my arm and head away from my corner, having met the electorate. A house divided, as Lincoln once famously said, cannot stand. But I stand out with BLM because all lives matter in the end, must by rights include them, include them, include them.
Lydia, will you be giving us an intro to the song? You're muted.
Yes, I will. Thank you. I want to thank Larry for that beautiful poem that he wrote and for his reflections, which I'm sure some of us can relate to what it's been like to be white in America and grow up in a segregated white culture and now be a part of that, the awakening that we're having. So our music director, Tad Koryeth, is on vacation this week with his wife. And but before he left, he contacted Kid Astronaut and asked Kid to provide us with a rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is widely known as the African American national anthem. The lyrics for the song were written in 1900 by James Weldon Johnson, who was an American writer and civil rights activist. He was a leader in the NAACP and served as its executive officer for a decade. He was also the first Black lawyer in the state of Florida. He was appointed under President Theodore Roosevelt as U.S. Consul in Venezuela and Nicaragua for most of the period from 1906 to 1913. And in 1934, he was the first African-American professor to be hired at New York University. And later in life, he was a professor of creative literature and a writer at Fisk University, a historically Black university. This song I read was also, he wrote it and some young Black schoolgirls started singing it and people became so enthralled and it got picked up by the NAACP and then became, as I said, what they call the African American national anthem. So I hope you enjoy Kid Astronaut's version of it.
What's up, everyone? My name is Kid Astronaut, and here's Lift Every Voice and Sing. It's a beautiful song. It is kind of long though, so let's get started. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let all rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady beats have not a weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of all weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Blessed our feet, straight from the places, our God, where we met thee. Blessed our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Thank y'all. Peace.
I love that song. So, Let America Be America Again is a poem written in 1935 by African-American poet Langston Hughes. The poem speaks about the American dream that was literally denied Black and lower class Americans. Langston Hughes was the preeminent poet of the Harlem Renaissance, easy for me to say, Renaissance, and is recognized even today as a leading voice against the white supremacist caste system in America. Martin Luther King Jr. and Langston Hughes, as it turns out, were friends. They even traveled to Nigeria together in 1960. During the height of the Red Scare, though, Hughes was called to testify before the infamous Congressional Witch Hunting Committee chaired by Joe McCarthy and labeled a communist sympathizer. Even though King needed to sever all overt ties to several friends, including Hughes, who were so labeled as communist sympathizers, King managed, nevertheless, to include many of the ideas in Hughes' poetry into his own sermons, including his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, which we heard at the start of this service. The poem starts out with one voice praising the idealized America, home of the brave and land of the free stuff. But a second voice interrupts with commentary saying that the ideal never has been America to the slaves and immigrants, which creates the tension that Hughes works through the rest of the poem. Now would be a good time to take a listen.
Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It was never America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free, equality in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor, white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead. I am the poorest worker bartered through the years yet. I am the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I am the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home, for I am the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lay, and torn from black Africa's strand to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has yet been and yet must be the land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on people's lives, we must take back our land again. America, oh yes, I say it plain. America was never America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rake and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft, of stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
Wow, right? Whew. I was so grateful that I found that, and will be giving a donation to theloft.org and personally thanking Dennis Smith for a beautiful rendition of that Langston Hughes song. So each week, we in this community remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today, we're sharing our plate with the I Have a Dream Foundation of Boulder County. Well, you may not know, I mean, it's, you know, on Martin Luther King Day to have this I Have a Dream Foundation, like where did that come from for the work that they do? It was founded in 1981 in New York when Eugene Lang, a businessman, returned to PS 121, Public School 121, the elementary school he had attended in East Harlem 50 years earlier. And he went there to address a class of graduating sixth graders. He intended to tell the students, work hard and you'll succeed. But on the way to the podium, the school principal told Lang that 3/4 of the school students would probably never finish high school. That prompted Lang to make an impromptu change in his speech, and he promised college tuition to every sixth grader who stayed in high school and graduated. Lang told that class about witnessing Dr. Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March on Washington. And he urged his students to dream their own dreams and promised that he would do all he could do to help them achieve them. That's how they got the name of the Dreamers as well. But pretty soon, Eugene Lang realized that he could not just provide money for these dreamers, provide this carrot out there, and that would be all that was needed. There were 61 of them in that graduating sixth grade class. So he hired a full-time program coordinator, and he enlisted the support of many local community grassroots organizations to help these children get through middle school and high school. So that's how that organization started, and now it has grown so that there's I Have a Dream foundations all over the country, including Boulder County. And we've been supporting the I Have a Dream class that started at Pioneer Elementary. We've been supporting them for 8 years now. We have a commitment of $2,000 for this class that ends in 2022 when the last of them graduates. And through our support, we are helping many young people reach their dreams as well. So please text generously And after you've made your offering, you are welcome to share this in the chat. What will you do to bring MLK's vision of racial justice to life? For the work of this fellowship, bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice into the world, and to the I Have a Dream Foundation of Boulder County, we dedicate the offerings today.
And now we sing. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Now I invite us into our time of community connection, our time of sacred sharing. Take a couple of deep breaths first. Just arrive more present into this moment. Check in with your own heart. And if you'd like to share a joy or a concern, please raise your hand using the button in the participants window, and Tech Usher Deborah will unmute you. If you prefer, you can share your joy or concern in the chat window by sending a chat to everyone, and then Deborah will read them out loud to the rest of us. When you do share, either by voice or by chat, please tell us your name, the pronouns you use, and where you live, and then briefly let us know what is in your heart today. And I will put a stone in our sacred waters on your behalf. I have 3 last stones this morning. Wendy shared with you that her father, Jim, has passed away, and I will put a stone in our waters on behalf of the congregation, and looking forward to the day when we can celebrate his life together. I also put a stone in this morning for my dear friend Gogi Hodder, who passed away yesterday after a 10-month battle with stage 4 cancer. And there's a stone here for all those who have died of COVID, during COVID, and for their families, and the challenges, the extra challenges of grief during this time of the pandemic. Oh, actually, it'll be 4 stones this morning. And for our national leaders who are for defending democracy as they fear for their own lives, and again for this upcoming week of stress during the transition, what should be a joyful transition of power. And a last stone for all of those joys and concerns that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, knowing that even in our silence we are bound together in the web of life. Beloveds, today you may have come weary from the pandemic and the pain of our political instability. If that is so, know that you are not alone. If you came angry at the ongoing hate and the legacy of racism in this country, you are not alone. If you came feeling isolated by the forced social distancing needed for health and safety, you are not alone. In the midst of these great challenges, our lives are also so full with challenges of our own and difficulties in our own families, and also with joys of being together, joys of finding ways to connect with friends across distances, reconnected relationships, joys that we can see when we look out at the birds from our windows. Our lives are so full. Let us be with those whose griefs are too big to bear alone. And let us also find many ways to come together, even in these times of COVID, to celebrate the beauty of our lives. Because finding joy in the midst of despair is a subversive act in and of itself. May we be present to all of it, the joy and the challenge. May this be our promise and our prayer.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for its soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle
On May 18th, 1966, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King delivered the prestigious Ware Lecture at the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. Now, I don't want to out any of you as being, well, elders, but were any of you longtime UUs there? If so, let us know in the chat. I'd love to know if any of you were able to actually hear him live. I'm going to be quoting from Dr. King a lot in my comments today, and just so you know, I've decided to keep the original words, even though today some of us would use different words for Black people and would use more inclusive language. Now, King was invited by his longtime friend to deliver this Ware lecture. He was the president of the UUA, Dana Greeley, Reverend Dana Greeley. He shared his own connections to Unitarian Universalism in his opening remarks. This is Dr. King speaking. My own personal experience with Unitarian Universalism began when I was a student at Boston University back in the early 50s. I can remember on several occasions visiting Arlington Street Church, where your distinguished Dr. Greeley pastored at the time. And I can remember beyond that, in the early years of my ministry. Indeed, beyond that, in the early years of the bus boycotts in Montgomery, Alabama, 3 of your ministers visited and encouraged me during the very trying and often difficult period. So imagine King preaching to a mostly white audience of the recently merged Unitarian and Universalists in 1966. It was just 3 years after he wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail, which I understand that Clara Kelly got to teach to her class this week. So yay, Clara. And here in this letter to a Birmingham jail, he expressed his anger towards the white moderate. And he said, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And yet there he was in a room that I could probably only imagine as full of mostly white moderates. There he was reaching across racial and cultural divides to continue to sway the minds and hearts of those who he felt most betrayed the movement and the many Black lives that were at stake. He entitled his lecture to UU's Don't Sleep Through the Revolution, playing off the story of Rip Van Winkle, who slept through the American Revolution. So much of what he said to that group of UUs in 1966 rings true. And today, there's a calling to take that message into this context. King said, the great question is, what do we do when we find ourselves in such a period? Certainly, the church has a great responsibility because when the church is true to its nature, it stands as a moral guardian of the community and of society. It has always been the role of the church to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, and to question and break mores if necessary. I'm sure that we all agree that the church has a major role to play in this period of social change. He articulated 4 things that the church must do and challenged Unitarian Universalists to do so. First, he said, congregations must instill in their people that all life is interrelated, that we are all tied together. Second, he said, it is necessary for the church to reaffirm over and over again the essential immorality of racial segregation. We must make it clear that segregation, whether it's in the public schools or housing or in recreational facilities or in the church itself, is morally wrong and sinful. He quoted Paul Tillich, who talked about sin being about separation and segregation being the most profound form of segregation. Third, he said, we must refute the idea that there are inferior and superior races. Now, that might seem obvious, so obvious to us, but listen to what he had to say about that even in 1966. Today's arguments are generally placed in more subtle cultural grounds. For instance, the Negro is not culturally ready for integration. If you integrate the schools and other areas of life, this will pull the race back a generation. Or another, the Negro is a criminal. You see, he has the highest crime rate in any city. And so the argument goes on ad infinitum. But those who use these arguments never say that if there are lagging standards in the Negro community, and there certainly are, they lag because of segregation and discrimination. They never go on to say criminal responses are environmental and not racial. Poverty, ignorance, economic deprivation, social isolation breed crime in any racial group. It is a tortuous logic to use the tragic results of segregation as an argument for the continuation of it. It is necessary to go to the root cause to deal with this problem. I would venture to say that much of our discourse today has become even more subtle and far more dangerous, except, of course, the discourse on the fringes, which I'll talk about momentarily. But the discourse that maybe we have consciously or subconsciously with one another. Fourth, the church must move out into the area of social justice. It is not enough for the church to work in the ideological realm and to clear up misguided ideas. To remain awake through this social revolution, the church must engage in strong action programs to get rid of the last vestiges of segregation and discrimination. Now I'm going to make the assumption, because I can't see you all over there in your little boxes. I'm going to make the assumption that all of us in the room are nodding our heads in agreement. Yes, we are all interrelated. We are all interconnected. Yes, of course, we must speak out against the immorality of racial segregation. Of course, we understand that there are not inferior races. And yes, more action is needed on the part of the religious community. But here we are, 55 years later. Our cities and our towns remain segregated, with the plight of majority Black inner cities still plagued with the same issues of inadequate schools, housing, food sources, and jobs, and racism amongst those who are supposed to be the community support for public safety. Here we are 55 years later with a sharp and disturbing rise in unabashed white supremacists, organized and encouraged by our president, who are seeking to dismantle democracy. Now, don't let the media distortions fool you. This network that is seeking to tear apart our nation is not a bunch of economically disgruntled working class white people. The events of the past week have shown us in technicolor that a dangerous coalition has formed across class divides within law enforcement and within the political corridors of this country. And it is getting stronger, no longer hiding in the shadows. I'm afraid that many of us perhaps were asleep in the slow growing revolution from the right that we're seeing. Or perhaps we were awake to it in some kind of a sleep wakefulness, but not empowered enough to know what to do. While that counter-revolution, the inciters of racial hate, were coalescing and gathering arms. Martin Luther King was a revolutionary. He was a revolutionary who took his marching orders from the likes of Jesus and Gandhi, and through powerful nonviolent action, rooted in a deep love for all of humanity, He set out to change the course of history. So today, 55 years later, he asks us again those haunting words: what must we do when we find ourselves in such a period? So here's my thoughts on what's needed now. First, we must fully embody that sacred knowledge of our interdependence. As much of as the structures in our cities and towns, the structures of our criminal justice system, the structures of our institutions, and even the structures within our congregation divide us intentionally and unintentionally, we must live into a new narrative and into new systems. I shared a story at the affordable housing meeting this past week of when I was 16 and the very first time I went to New York City. And I grew up in a town much like Larry's, all white. And I came down, the first time I went by myself, came down an escalator at Port Authority and saw a sea of sleeping bags and people in them on the floor of the Port Authority transportation building. The faces in those sleeping bags were Black. And in that moment, I had a deep knowledge, a deep inner knowing that my life and their lives were not separate. No matter how tall the gates were around my community, no matter how much my education was trying to tell me that that wasn't the case, I knew it in my bones. And even with that powerful moment in my life that has guided me as a North Star, I have remained adapted to a white supremacy culture that denies the full human dignity of anyone who is not white identified or doesn't look white or act white. This is hard stuff to shake off, and we must do it with vigilance. Second, what I believe is needed now is that we have to start with what is right in front of us, disrupting the comfortable narrative that racism is something out there, something down south, something from the past, and that our liberal ideologies and communities are immune from its clutches. My colleague, Pedro Silva, wrote a blog where he shared twice that he lives here in Lafayette and some of the new houses that were built off of 287. Twice in the past year and a half, people have called the police on him. Once because some of his Black friends, other Black pastors, were at his door waiting for him when he wasn't home. And the other time because he left his dog outside in the snow, a husky. I've lived here 14 years and nobody has ever called the police on me. How often does that happen to the white people in this room? I am committed to dismantling those structures and strictures that impede inclusivity, that starting in this community and starting right here in this congregation. Third, and this is where I think this gets pretty important for how my mind has been structured. We cannot wait for another great leader, Black, white, or of any race, to come along and inspire us into action. Today's social justice movements are different. The current movement for Black lives does not have centralized leadership, but instead describes themselves as an ecosystem of individuals and organizations that are creating a shared vision and policy agenda to win rights, recognition, and resources for Black people. The movement structure, they say, is decentralized yet cohesive. And I love that image of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is comprised of all living things that share an environment. Everything in an ecosystem plays an important role in that ecosystem. This generation's Black empowerment movement is taking Dr. King's understanding of interrelatedness to its next natural level in our social interrelatedness. Now, engaging in an ecosystem is much different than following the inspiration of a great and learned leader. We can engage with a national leader from a distance, sharing ideologies and nodding politely without really shifting systems. In an ecosystem is the recognition that all of our actions, including our inactions, impact the system. And bending to the needs of those most impacted by current conditions leads to more health and more balance in an ecosystem. Ignoring them leads to extinction. I'm so grateful that our Social Justice Council has created in their justice initiatives a mandate that we do just that. Engage in communities that are led by Black, Indigenous people of color, and Latino, Latina, Latinx communities. So what we want to be doing now is anytime we are engaged in a social justice issue, be connected with groups that are led, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's housing issues. We have to have those people not only at the table, but leading us. Now that could just remain words on our website, or worse yet, get buried in a Google Doc somewhere. They're ideological statements right now. So what's needed now is the commitment and the staying power. I know we have people engaged in many ways in this kind of social justice, and I'm so grateful for the strides we have made. And as we move forward, let us never forget Dr. King's reminder of our moral obligation as a religious community. The church has a great responsibility because when the church is true to its nature, it stands as a moral guardian of the community and of society. There has always been the role of the church, it has always been the role of the church to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, and to question and break mores if necessary. May this prophetic role be our promise and our prayer for a more just world. Blessed be.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory. The heavens, no man, no weapon formed against. Yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through America with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory.
for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald eagle. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in a dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders, young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Yeah, John. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. So sure, we will be sure. So sure to the world, Lord. God be the glory. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Good thing it's after that after the election, so that little vote for Biden piece won't get us in any trouble as a congregation. Well, I hope you did enjoy that beautiful piece of music from the movie Selma to end our service. We'll extinguish our chalice now. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Beloveds, let us go forth inspired by the message of Dr. King and remembering our role, whatever we find it to be creating a world where truly freedom and dignity reign. Blessed be. Amen.